Okay, so let's talk about Charlie Chan from crimereads.com, The Birth of American Detective Fiction, the unlikely detectives who would launch a literary phenomena by Leslie Klinger. In 1924, anti-Asian sentiments were at their peak when, with overwhelming support, the United States Congress passed and President Calvin Coolidge signed the Immigration Act, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act. The new law adopted the concept of national origin quotas, limiting overall immigration to 150,000 persons per year, restricting immigration to 2% of the quantity of those nationals already present in the United States, according to the 1890 census, and completely prohibiting the immigration of those ineligible for U.S. citizenship. This last standard effectively barred half the world's population and lumped Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Indians, Thais, and Indonesians and others into the category of Asiatic. Those Asiatics already living in the United States would be barred from citizenship and prevented from bringing other family members into the country. In 1920, after exhausting himself with work on some very successful stage plays, Biggers traveled to Honolulu. He continued to write a variety of short stories having nothing to do with Hawaii. But he was apparently fascinated by the melting pot that was 1920s Honolulu. And we talked about this in last semester's work about the regional America when we talked about Hawaii, being that Hawaii is probably the most multinational, multiracial place on the planet. Biggers conceived of a mystery set there, and in 1922 he described the work in progress to his editor as including army people, traders, planters, and Americanized Chinese houseboy, the star pitcher of an all-China baseball nine, the lawyer for an opium ring, an admiral of a fleet, an old Yankee from New Bedford, a champion Hawaiian swimmer, beachcombers, the president of a Japanese bank. But there was no mention of a detective. According to Biggers, in the summer of 1924, he stopped by the New York Public Library reading room, and while browsing through Hawaiian newspapers, he found an account of the Honolulu police. In an obscure corner of the inside page, he found an item to the effect that a certain hapless Chinese, being too fond of opium, had been arrested by Sergeants Chang Apina and Lee Falk of the Honolulu police. So Sergeant Charlie Chan entered the story of the house without a key. Biggers was no racial crusader, and he certainly had no intention of creating a Chinese character who would fly in the face of American stereotypes or alter the public view of foreigners. Chan is decidedly different. He is described as a fat man with chubby cheeks of a baby, yet he walks with the dainty step of a woman. He has ivory skin, short black hair, and amber eyes. He does not speak pidgin English, as do several of the Japanese characters in the book. Rather, he speaks his own brand of English. In this respect, he's as foreign as Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, whose speech is as distinctive as Chan's. Chan also regularly displays his animosity toward the Japanese, a sentiment common in Hawaii in the 1920s and throughout America. And we talked about this at length also when we talked about the eventual Japanese internment during World War II. Back to our story. In the House Without a Key, though he eventually appreciates Chan's talents, the young Bostonian protagonist cannot erase his sense of a marked gulf between Chan and himself. In this, the author Biggers accurately reflected the realities facing the American people, notwithstanding harsh policies such as the Immigration Act. The ethnic populations of America were here to stay. His tales were of a slightly less than American detective. The book publication of The House Without a Key occurred in 1925, and over the next 7 years, 5 more Chan novels appeared, all first serialized in the Saturday Evening Post. The Chinese Parrot, Behind the Curtain, The Black Camel, Charlie Chan Carries On, and The Keeper of the Keys. The novels were extremely popular and were adopted into films, cartoons, comic strips, and radio programs. The last Chan film was in 1947, and a cartoon series ran in 1972 and 73. Howard Haycraft, in his masterful Murder for Pleasure, The Life and Times of the Detective Story, 1941, summed up the stories of the Chan series. Quote, "They are clean, humorous, unpretentious, more than a little romantic, and, it must be confessed, just a shade mechanical and old-fashioned by modern plot standards." The absence of any novel or startling departure, in fact, is probably the reason that the first Chan story created no such popular or critical stir as the first Philo Vance case, and it was not until 2 or 3 of his adventures had appeared that he struck full stride. Once started, however, he has been difficult to stop. Conventional as the narratives often were, Charlie Chan's personal popularity played a part in the renaissance of the American detective story that cannot be ignored. Okay, so let's take a quick look at a video, the Charlie Chan discussion. And that's our brief introduction today to the novel series, TV, and movie series of America's real first detective series after Poe, Charlie Chan.